Thank you, Stacy. Very nice job. I want to thank you all for coming out and paying tribute to my my father-in-law. It's a rainy, nasty morning, and we all have to make the sacrifices, unfortunately. I've always been proud and honored to be a member of the Claudin family. Gene was my father-in-law. He was my friend, and he was my counsel for 40 plus years. Let me take you back a little bit to 1969. I had just come home from service and gone back to work for WMBD Radio. And I had a friend of mine that called and wanted me to take part in a production, Peoria Players. And I was a speech and theater major. And I said, sure, I'll be glad to take part in it. And I went out and opened the doors to the back of the theater that night to do a reading. And I saw on stage the most beautiful girl I ever saw in my life. She still is. I hadn't met the rest of her family until much later, and finally I got to meet her father. We had made arrangements one night to go out and have some coffee and sandwiches at one of the restaurants around town after rehearsal. And so I told him, well, I'll meet you there. And this guy got out of the car, and he was a big, tall, strapping, handsome-looking guy. And I'm thinking, my gosh, am I going to have to compete with a guy like that? But he made it easy. He really did. I mean, if anybody knew Gene, he was a salesman at heart. And the first thing that he sold was himself. It didn't take much of an effort because he was a likable individual, and you automatically took to him right away. And that was the case with Gene all through our relationship. I was happy enough to be able to date his daughter for a period of time until we finally decided we wanted to get married. And once we made that decision, Gene got to know me and I got to know him. We found out we had similar interests, cars and cooking and all sorts of things over the years. And he was just a wonderful father-in-law. Broadcasting is a transient business, and we made a lot of stops along the way, and I was lucky enough to be married to a radio wife, and still am. And that means somebody that will travel with you and go where you have to go. We waited 5 years before we had any children. Jack came along in 1976. He was the first grandson of the family, thankfully not the last. But Gene was so proud of him, and he doted on him like he doted on all the grandchildren. And 4 years later, our daughter Catherine was born. She's now a singer and has her own band in Miami, and our son is also in broadcasting. He's up in Detroit. But Gene was very proud of both of our kids as well as all of the grandkids. And Camille and I continued to do some theater work from time to time, in addition to my being in broadcasting. And we found ourselves, I think it was 1987, down in Vero Beach, Florida. And she didn't have as much time to do theater work as I did over the course of the years. And I found myself in a Christmas holiday production. And during that production, they had a piece of verse for me to do. And Gene and Bernice got wind of it a little bit later on, and they decided to incorporate it in some of our traditions at holiday time. And I'd like to do that for you if I could. It's not a well-known piece, but a lot of people have heard it over the years, and I think it fits well to this particular occasion. We do it at Christmas time and at Easter as well. He was born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman. Until he was 30, he worked in a carpenter shop, and then for 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He wrote no books, he held no office, he never owned a home. He was never in a big city. He never traveled 200 miles from the place he was born. He never did any of the things that usually accompany greatness. The authorities condemned his teachings. His friends deserted him. One betrayed him, his enemies, for a paltry sum. One denied him. He went through the mockery of a trial. He was nailed on a cross between two thieves. While he was dying, his executioners gambled for the only piece of property he owned on earth, his coat. When he was dead, he was taken down and placed in a borrowed grave. 20 centuries have come and gone, yet today he's the crowning glory of the human race, the adored leader of hundreds of millions of the earth's inhabitants. All the armies that ever marched, all the navies that were ever assembled, and all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the rulers that ever reigned combined. have not affected the life of man upon this earth so profoundly as that one solitary life.